Hello everyone, I'm Bob Keyser. This is the Son of Man Urantia project, spreading the fatherhood of God, the siblinghood of humanity, and our commandment to treat others as God would have us do. No religion, no politics. Today we go into chapter 6, the Adolescent Years, from the Son of Man Urantia, the life and teachings of Jesus from the Urantia book. Grab your copy on Amazon, hit that like and subscribe button, and then sit back and marvel at the wildest story to ever unfold in the cosmos. Chapter 6, the Adolescent Years. In his youth, Jesus experienced similar challenges as others growing up on a planet in spiritual isolation. Young people may find solace in the compassion he nurtured as the Son of Man. Jesus was now tasked with caring for an ever poorer household while becoming increasingly aware of his past as a Creator's Son. Above all, his youthful mind embraced a deepening certainty of his mission to reveal the Father to humanity. The 16th year, AD 10. At age 16, Jesus was a robust and comely young man with a warm and compassionate smile, even though he was becoming more serious over time. He strove to harmonize his roles as friend and divine teacher. Biologically mature, his mind began the progressive mental development required of mortals in the material worlds of time and space. Jesus completed this maturation in one lifetime. For most, it takes many more. Though age does not ensure wisdom, maturity requires time, intent, and experience. Mary held that Jesus was the Jews' Messiah and had shared this with his siblings, instructing them to keep it secret. Yet he denied this, bewildering them. Recalling that Joseph never prevailed in disputes with Mary, Jesus allowed her beliefs without endorsement. He rarely discussed his divine mission with her. Simon began school at the synagogue this year, and James assumed the duty of teaching the sisters, Mary, Martha, and young Ruth. The Jews allowed only men to be educated in a synagogue, so Jesus insisted that his sisters were schooled at home. Like other gender disparities in Jewish tradition, Jesus deemed the unequal rights of men and women archaic and unjust. Jesus' carpentry skills kept him in demand, and when he had more work than he could handle, James assisted. In his scarce free time, Jesus would play with the young children. Mary was proud, yet sorrowful, that her son bore such heavy responsibilities at his young age. The 17th year, AD 11. The Zealots, a political group comprising men unwilling to wait for the Jewish Messiah, wanted to rebel against the Romans. Much of Galilee supported them, and a delegation came to Nazareth to recruit new members. When approached, Jesus declined, withholding his reasons. Many young Nazarenes emulated him, likewise abstaining from rebellion against the Romans. Mary had her own plans. She urged Jesus to join the Zealots and insisted that by refusing, he was breaking his pledge of obedience. Jesus gently placed a hand on his mother's shoulder and, looking into her eyes, said, "Mother, how could you say that?" Mary was taken aback and let the idea drop, which was more than Joseph could ever accomplish. Jesus' problems did not end with Mary. His uncle Simon had joined the Zealots and was one of their leaders. Jesus' brother James urged him to do the same. The young men in Nazareth were now divided due to Jesus' refusal to participate. Roughly half backed the rebels, and the rest wanted to form a more moderate group led by Jesus, an honor he also refused. The people in Nazareth respected Jesus so much that his refusals perplexed many of the town's men, leaving them uncertain of their course. Suddenly and unwittingly, Jesus became entangled in a political dispute. He had tried to avoid this situation, aware of the perils spiritual leaders encounter when involved with politics. Jesus faced pressure to choose a side or provide a compelling reason for not doing so. This posed a further dilemma. He could not yet reveal his divine nature, as the time to proclaim his mission had not yet arrived. Instead, Jesus cited his usual reason for abstaining. His duty to his late father's household precluded joining the zealots. When the townspeople offered the funds needed to support the family, Jesus declined, stating money could not replace his love. Nazarenes had witnessed Jesus' devotion to his family after Joseph's death, and for many, this sufficed. Still, some remained unsatisfied with his decision. Then James, coached by the synagogue Kazan, spoke. He told the people that the only reason Jesus was not aiding the zealots then was that he, James, was still too young to assume responsibility for their household. He asked the people to wait until his brothers were raised, saying that then there would be 5 devoted zealots among them. This appeased most townspeople, but the incident lingered in their memory, and Jesus never again regained universal approval. This was one reason for his later move to Capernaum. James completed school this year and assumed Jesus' work crafting yokes and plows. This allowed Jesus to leave his bench and build cabinets for the townsfolk. During this time, Jesus further refined his thoughts, balancing his human divine nature. Jesus advanced as we do, by following the guidance of his thought adjuster. Jesus' path to perfection, as ours will be, was earned at every point along the way. The 18th year, AD 12. During this year, the family sold most of their remaining possessions. With the money, they paid taxes, bought James new tools, and paid off part of their old carpenter shop near the caravan lot. Jesus took James to his first Passover. As they journeyed, Jesus, as his father had done for him when a child, shared historical tales along the way. They discussed the challenges at home and the tensions rising between the Jews and the Romans. Jesus strove to prepare James for the horror of Passover rites, but James was less shaken than Jesus had been. James understood Jesus' mission no better than the others, but he was eager to assume his role as eldest so Jesus could begin his Father's work. Simon of Bethany had died. At the Passover feast, Jesus brought the sacrificial lamb from the temple and served as the household leader for the ceremony. James gazed in awe at Jerusalem as Jesus had his first time from Mount Olivet. And in the temple, James completed the required rites to be recognized as a Jewish citizen. Rather than return to Nazareth the following day, they stayed another night because James hoped to hear Jesus teach in the temple. But Jesus remained silent throughout. James was puzzled by Jesus' reserve, and when he asked why he was not participating in the discussions, he only said his hour had not yet come. Observing the temple rites, he pitied his fellow Jews' outdated traditions. Back in Nazareth, Jesus resumed his work in Joseph's old repair shop. There, he conversed with common folk from far-off regions. Jesus valued people for their character, not their possessions. He connected with diverse people across the various stages of growth that we all complete. Occasionally, Jesus read the scriptures at the synagogue on Saturday mornings and, weather permitting, walked in the countryside with his brothers and sisters. He joined a young men's philosophical club and had a loyal group of friends. After 4 years of falling income, by September, the family was destitute. Zacharias, John's father, passed away, so Elizabeth brought John to Nazareth to visit Jesus and discuss their future. John and Jesus held many private talks. They resolved that John should return to his farm to care for his mother until God summoned them to their divine missions. This they did, and John did not see Jesus again until the day that Jesus approached him, now as John the Baptist, to be baptized in the Jordan River. On December 3rd, baby Amos died of a high fever. With his father gone, Jesus had to console Mary in her sorrow, serving as both her son and head of the household. Jesus handled this crisis so adeptly that Mary never again doubted his leadership. The cost of Amos's funeral strained their circumstances, but Jesus remained undaunted. He assured his family they would survive and to trust in brighter days ahead. His optimism unified them, strengthening his siblings' developing characters. Jesus led by example. His patience held firm unless someone sought to divert him from his Father's purpose, revealing the righteous indignation inherited from Mary. His optimism enabled him to endure mortal life's trials. Jesus lived as though ever in God's presence. The 19th year, AD 13. Jesus taught positively. He urged people to act rightly, not what to shun. This encouraging approach was contrary to Jewish customs of prohibiting sinful deeds based on ancient taboos. Most of Jesus' siblings behaved well, seldom needing punishment. Jude, however, was the exception. He had been more rebellious than his brothers and sisters since childhood, and at times Jesus disciplined him. When he did, it was always with Jude's agreement and the others' approval. But Jesus was also fair. He understood that justice and rules were flexible and that each case had to be assessed based on the situation. Jesus earned universal respect, and his siblings often came to him for advice. Of the brothers, James was a good student, balanced in personality, though less spiritual than Jesus. Joseph was somewhat slower than his siblings, but he was a diligent worker. Simon tended to be the kind-hearted dreamer in the family, and that led to unique challenges. But it was Jude who was the fiery idealist, and that never changed. Of the sisters, Miriam shone. She was one of the loveliest and most balanced women in Nazareth, with deep spiritual insight. Martha was more like Joseph, less gifted than the others, but she was also well behaved, like her brother. Baby Ruth was everyone's beloved, and she adored Jesus completely. The siblings observed Jewish customs publicly, but at home, Jesus taught them a freer way to worship God than following outdated rules. Jude began school this year, and Jesus sold his harp to pay his admission. While Jesus missed relaxing at night with his music, he comforted himself knowing that at least the Roman tax collector did not have his harp. Rebecca, Ezra's daughter. Being a smart, robust, and handsome youth, Jesus drew the attention of the young women in town. Rebecca, the daughter of Ezra, a wealthy Nazareth merchant, confided to Miriam that she was enamored with him. Miriam then informed Mary, who was displeased with this turn of events. Mary deemed the family's plight dire enough without fearing Jesus' loss to another woman. Mary was determined to prevent this, and she and Miriam devised a plan to stop Rebekah before Jesus knew of her feelings. Mary and Miriam shared their secret about Jesus with Rebekah, hoping to dissuade her. It did not. Indeed, their revelations about Jesus intensified her devotion. If he were the Messiah, he needed a loyal wife, and she believed herself suited. Regarding Mary's concern about who would support the household, Rebekah said her father would provide the funds. But Mary and Miriam were unconvinced and refused to help her. Rebekah was undeterred and resolved to approach Jesus directly. She made a plan, consulted her father, and then invited Jesus to dine with them for her 17th birthday. Jesus agreed to attend and heard Rebekah's proposal. Then he explained that regarding his family's needs, no amount of money could take the place of his presence with them. Jesus told Rebekah and her father that the most sacred trust people hold is to remain loyal to their own flesh and blood. When Ezra heard this, he withdrew, leaving Jesus and Rebekah to speak privately. But as he was leaving the room, he whispered to his wife that Jesus was too honorable to abandon his duties and join their family. In private, Rebekah professed her love to Jesus. This was a new experience for Jesus. He had viewed girls as friends, no different from the boys. After Rebekah spoke, Jesus thanked her, explaining that he could only be a friend to her until he had fulfilled his duties. Furthermore, if he were a child of destiny, he would have to obey his father's will when the time arrived. But Rebekah loved and worshiped Jesus as the greatest man she knew, and nothing he said that night changed her feelings for him. She was heartbroken and eventually persuaded her father to relocate their household to Sepphoris. Throughout her life, Rebekah never married. She remained loyal to Jesus and was with Mary and the other women as he died on the cross. His 20th year, AD 14. Everyone in Nazareth heard about Jesus' refusal of Rebekah's proposal, and he never faced such a situation again. But the story of Rebekah's love was long remembered. To ease his mind, Jesus attended Passover in Jerusalem and visited Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Both their parents had died, and Lazarus, being Jesus' age, was the head of their household. Martha was a year older than Jesus, and Mary was 2 years younger. Jesus had not told Lazarus that he was joining their Passover dinner, and the three had planned to celebrate with friends. But when Jesus arrived, he urged them to stay home for Passover. Lazarus protested, explaining that he did not have the required sacrificial lamb from the temple. Jesus seized the moment to teach that killing animals in an effort to please God was a crude, outdated ritual left over from Mosaic times. He said the other Jews could follow tradition, and that they probably should, but that Lazarus, Mary, and Martha had embraced God's truth, understood his boundless love, and would no longer honor him with death's shadow. That evening marked the first Passover without a sacrificial lamb. During the meal, Jesus named the Jews' hard bread the bread of life, and the wine they shared the water of life. Thereafter, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha celebrated Passover without the lamb. But at Jesus' house in Nazareth, they adhered to Mosaic laws, to honor his mother. Jesus sold Joseph's remaining Capernaum property to Zebedee, a boat builder, and Joseph completed school, taking his place at the carpenter bench. With 3 brothers now working, they were earning enough money to endure. Jesus had grown. He both guided as a human father and heeded his heavenly Father's counsel. Through past trials, he had learned to confront injustice, endure disappointment, and blend his divine nature with the challenges of mortal existence. Like everyone, Jesus had to plan for the future and to deal with the present. By now, he had nearly perfected the art of channeling spiritual energy to fuel earthly accomplishments, and he was transforming challenges into triumphs that would inspire humanity throughout eternity. Throughout his earthly life, Jesus lived fully as a human. These experiences deepened his love and compassion for humanity, mortals experiencing their brief and confusing lives of the flesh. Born as a babe of the material realm, Jesus had now matured into adulthood and stood ready to reveal God to mortals and to lead them to the Father. Okay, folks, that was it for chapter 6, the adolescent years. Up next is chapter 7, Jesus' early manhood, from the Son of Man, Urantia, the life and teachings of Jesus from the Urantia book. Grab your copy on Amazon, hit that like and subscribe button, and then get out there and live Jesus' message of love, mercy, and forgiveness. Bobby Keyser, out here.